Welcome, organic catastrophes. Please leave your linear logic at the door. It's already bleeding from the ears. There's a peculiar protocol in the interdimensional library, unspoken, deeply ritualized, and enforced by those who foolishly believe bolts, sigils, and bureaucratic memos can contain me. The protocol is known as the locking of the door, a sweet little farce, akin to locking a screen door to keep out a hurricane of sardonic malice. A bolt slid, a glyph ignited, a coward's whisper to fate, meeting in progress. Do not disturb. It was a door meant to keep me out. Idiots. Terrified, pastryless idiots. They were voting, on propulsion of all things, on how to best shove this accursed library through the cosmic sludge of existence with fuel efficiency. The frontrunner? Voidmonger's cursed black holes, because apparently if it warps space-time and smells vaguely of fraud, the committee thinks it's avant-garde. Madeline chaired the meeting, of course, serene, coiffed, wielding her clipboard like a bladed callus. She had representatives from the Energy Allocation Subcommittee, the Reality Mechanics Board, and, laughably, the Cafeteria Union Steward, who was apparently brave enough to argue croissants could power a ship via emotional resonance and cinnamon. And wouldn't you know it, that idiot smug void-slinging huckster was winning. Voidmonger. A trench coat stitched from the absence of ethics, stuffed with collapsing stars and Sterling Archer's ego. So I made an entrance. The door didn't open. It ceased, with a thunderous whomp. Like reality choking on its own sarcasm, the bolt gave up. The wood vaporized, and the ash spiraled into the air, briefly forming the outline of a croissant. Pure coincidence, I assure you. Before dissipating, I stepped in. You were going to vote, I said, already trembling with the righteous fury of one denied breakfast and a platform. Without me. Madeline did not look up. That is her favorite flavor of insult. Deliberate non-engagement.
You're not on the propulsion committee,
she said. I am the propulsion committee. I have hurled this library across dimensions using only spite and overdue fines. My presence has more kinetic energy than 3 suns and a plate of rage scones. Voidmonger smirked. Gods help me, he smirked.
Someone's cranky they weren't invited to the cool kids' science fair,
he said, sipping what I'm fairly certain was a collapsing espresso shot. You smug entropy peddler, I snapped. A holographic tax dodge with a gravitational pull and the emotional maturity of a collapsed waveform. Voidmonger didn't even miss a beat.
And you're an overcooked calamari with a martyr complex and pastry addiction.
I have tasted memory, you swirling fraud, I hissed. I've seen croissants cradle civilizations. What have your black holes done besides swallow hope and quarterly budgets?
Oh, I'm sorry. Were we not supposed to weaponize imploding density? My mistake. Should have brought cinnamon.
Madeline's pen stopped mid-scribble.
Ladies,
she said flatly.
Please take your seats.
And then I let it rip. Oh yes, by all means, let's entrust our propulsion system to a cosmic greaseball in a space tuxedo who thinks hawking radiation is a shampoo. Let's jam a hole in the universe and call it cost-effective. I advanced. The table groaned like it knew this wasn't going to end diplomatically. Let's talk about black holes, shall we? Let's talk about weapons-grade nothingness, forged in the idiot kitchens of entropy. These things don't power, they consume. They don't carry us, they cheat us forward, leaving memory and structure in the dust. A tentacle unfurled and struck the table. You know what doesn't erase narrative meaning. Croissant-chan raised her hand.
pastries.
Pastries, I declared, like a prophet flinging holy syrup across the tabernacle. Croissants expand. They rise. They layer. Every fold is a dimension, every flake a history. They are culinary symphonies. Architecture you can butter. They do not destroy. They sustain. They warm the soul and stabilize metaphysical flight paths with joy-fueled aerodynamics. Madeline's pen paused midair, then resumed with a single surgical stroke, the bureaucratic equivalent of throwing a shoe. Croissant-chan, sipping tea that may or may not have existed before the scene began, said,
Okay, but maybe croissants aren't propulsion. They're just really, really good to, just eat.
I gasped. I really fucking gasped. You wound me with such blasphemy. Would you say the same about memory? About poetry? About hope? Should we plug a black hole into our core and expect it to care about the aroma of butter at dawn? I turned, gesturing wildly at the stunned committee like a chef unveiling an opera. Do black holes cradle broken hearts with pastry crusts? Have they ever softened the morning chill with a whisper of almond glaze? Do they weep when someone eats the corner first? I leaned dramatically over the table, eyes blazing with centuries of metaphor. Croissants are not propulsion. Croissants are confession. They are emotional combustion. You don't power a ship with physics. You seduce the fabric of reality into moving with yous. And reality, my dear misinformed colleagues, has a sweet tooth. Voidmonger leaned back, legs on the table like an intergalactic frat god.
Fun fact, croissants combust at warp factor 2. Trust me, I tested it. For science and tax deductions.
You combust at warp factor 2, I snarled, my voice cracking halfway through the insult like a divinity on the brink of a poetic breakdown. And not even impressively, like a sentient air fryer having an existential crisis halfway through defrost, just sputtering crumbs and self-loathing until even the toast gives up. I clutched my head. Not dramatically, no. That would imply control. I staggered 3 steps sideways and yelled at the ceiling. Why are we debating this? They picked holes over pastries. Black, joyless holes! Voidmonger smirked, but I could see the twitch. I had rattled him. Or maybe that was just his cloak buffering. I continued. I am a god of cosmic breadth, and yet here I am, derailed by the ghost of a continental breakfast and a moronic black hole entropy merchant who once sold a singularity as a yoga retreat.
Once, on purpose, and it looked amazing.
I angrily paced the room with dramatic flair. You think this library moves because of thrust? It fucking doesn't. It moves because of longing, because of desire, because somewhere someone remembers a feeling so pure it creates gravity. That's what croissants are. Condensed nostalgia, flavored hope. I faced Madeline, who was now actively ignoring me with the kind of rigor one used to survive divine apocalypses. Do you want to fly through space, or do you want to mean something while doing it? Croissant-chan, bless her flour-dusted soul, leaned toward Madeline and whispered,
Hey, is Master Cthulhu okay? He seems a little off his rocker.
Madeline didn't look up, but her pen circled a corner of her page in slow, deliberate swirls, a gesture of pure administrative dread.
He's relapsing.
She said.
Oh, on what?
Pastries, again, always croissants.
She sighed, adjusting her clipboard like it was a weapon she wished she were allowed to use.
Lovecraft never accounted for how deeply emotional his eldritch gods would get after a few millennia of suppressed trauma and complex carbohydrates.
Croissant-chan frowned.
I did find crumbs in the warp logs. I thought they were from a snack break.
They never are.
Madeline replied.
With him, it's always a cry for mythic intervention, baked in 12 layers of existential pastry grief.
Emotionally, metaphysically, or in terms of caloric balance?
Asked Voidmonger.
Yes,
Said Madeline. I ignored them. I was too far gone. They didn't understand. The emotional architecture of flaky dough, the defiant rise of yeast against void, the fragile miracle of warmth and softness surviving the cold vacuum of reason. I gathered myself, straightened what little remained of my dignity, and then I did it. I reached beneath my robe and produced a croissant. Not a normal one, a transcendent one, folded in recursive golden spirals, still warm from the dream ovens of a forgotten Paris that only exists in the hearts of wistful artists and vengeful pastry gods. I placed it on the table. Vote again. It is a truth universally ignored that when one eldritch tantrum ends, another committee meeting begins. This one began, if such a word can survive the metaphysical recoil of what just happened, with the scent of burnt parchment, residual buttery transcendence, and the haunting echo of someone having screamed, "Vote again!" like a pastry-crazed war god.
you look like a melted god, trapped in an office chair.
Madeline observed without looking up. "I'm relaxing," I said, stretching theatrically across the remnants of what used to be a functioning chair. "I have earned this collapse. I have triumphed over ignorance and vacuum-based oppression."
You screamed at a committee until they chose breakfast over physics.
She said. Exactly. Croissant-chan wandered by with a fresh tray.
How about a victory pastry?
I snatched one without hesitation and bit into it like I was devouring a metaphor. The croissant is in the warp core. Sanity is optional. And I, for one, taste laminated triumph. Voidmonger groaned in the background.
If I have to hear the phrase laminated triumph one more time, I'm selling this memory to a Scream-based ad network.
Voidmonger was now on his third attempt to sell singularity residue as a spiritually cleansing exfoliant.
It's not a black hole. It's a lifestyle.
He declared to a confused houseplant that might have once been sentient.
Are you buttering your notes?
Madeline asked, not looking up.
Obviously.
Croissant-chan said, casually smearing another line of clarified emotion across the minutes.
If I have to consume this discussion emotionally, I might as well pre-season it.
That's parchment.
Parchment is just bureaucratic toast.
Meanwhile, Madeline, goddess of bureaucracy and quiet wrath, was redrafting the propulsion minutes into a new file, titled Divine Psychosis Volume 2. She didn't look up. She never does. That's how one survives long-term exposure to croissant doctrine. And Vistarchi, who had been present the whole time, quiet, reverent, gently amused like a librarian watching children fail to alphabetize despair, finally spoke. She didn't clear her throat. She didn't raise her voice. She just tilted her golden tentacle hair slightly, tapped a single finger against the table, and asked,
"Why didn't we consider capturing the speed of light?"
It was not an accusation. It was worse. It was a reasonable suggestion. The silence that followed was not silence. It was a vacuum, swiftly and precisely manufactured from all available fragments of smug, shattered dignity. Voidmonger leaned back with the sort of grin you usually find on people about to deliver a TED talk, titled Weaponizing Smarm for Profit.
Wow, Vistarchi. What's next? Should we try math? Maybe even, gasp, consensus? File a form like mature cosmic entities?
He clicked his tongue. Oh,
Gods, next thing you know, we'll be wearing blazers and using Outlook. Don't answer. I felt a tremor of responsibility just now, and I think I'm allergic.
Croissant-chan actually dropped her butter knife. Madeline didn't sigh. She exhaled in legalese.
Because Vistarchi, light-speed solutions are boring.
Boring, I echoed, already curling a tentacle defensively around my croissant-laced ego.
Predictable!
Croissant-chan added.
Testable.
Madeline spat like the word had personally offended her clipboard. Voidmonger waved a hand.
Also, I can't sell light. It's too fast to invoice.
Vistarchi tapped her pen twice against the table and muttered.
You know, I sat through a tribunal where Kronos tried to reinvent decimal time. That was more coherent than this.
Voidmonger looked up.
And did he succeed?
No,
She said, dry as parchment.
but at least he didn't base it on pastries.
Objection, I wailed, clutching half a croissant like it was the last shard of a broken star. This is not based on pastries. It is elevated by them, exalted, transcended, practically divine. You think this is breakfast? This is momentum incarnate. This croissant has more gravitational influence than 3 of Jupiter's lesser moons, and every Nobel committee combined. I shook it at Vistarchi like a prophet brandishing the holy relic of gluten. Light speed doesn't comfort you after a betrayal. It doesn't weep butter. It doesn't flake in solidarity. The room was quiet, possibly out of pity. More likely out of fear I'd start sobbing into the laminated crumbs. This croissant, I whispered hoarsely, understands me. Croissant-chan's grin folded just slightly.
Do you think he's okay?
Madeline sighed, brushing Cthulhu's storm of flaky crumbs from her sleeve.
Is he ever? He's been making eye contact with that croissant for over a minute. That's either love or an edible psychosis.
Vistarchi glanced up from her scroll.
Should we initiate a pastry intervention protocol?
No,
Said Madeline.
but someone should hide the raspberry jam. It only encourages him.
Vistarchi rolled her eyes.
But anyway, light speed is the most efficient option.
Vistarchi repeated, louder this time, as if one of us might suddenly regain our grip on reason.
It doesn't require flakiness, or gravitational implosions, or emotional unraveling via gluten.
She looked around the room, clearly hoping someone, anyone, was still salvageable.
Just basic relativity, photonic capture, minor quantum refractors. You know, science.
Voidmonger raised his hand without looking up from his sketchpad.
Quick question. Can photonic capture be trademarked?
I stood, slowly, as though preparing to deliver a eulogy for reason. Light, I declared, flinging a tentacle toward the ceiling as if summoning a thunderclap of derision, moves without memory. It flits through the universe like a smug little streak of indifference, never feeling anything. It touches planets and leaves no crumbs. It reflects off surfaces but forms no emotional attachments. You call that propulsion. I call it a cosmic ghosting. I began pacing, sideways, through dimensions. It races forward with no intention but arrival, no nuance, no curl, no glaze, no depth. It's the universe's most emotionally unavailable speed. It doesn't stop for tea. It doesn't pause for flaky introspection. I whirled back towards the room. Croissant-chan, tell them how your pastries carry the weight of yearning. Tell them how butter holds more soul than 1,000,000,000,000 photons. Croissant-chan leaned back slowly, as if trying to process a metaphysical migraine made entirely of pride and sugar.
I mean, if yearning has mass and butter is a waveform, yes.
See? I shouted, triumphant and deeply unraveling. Science doesn't need speed. Science needs flaky, buttery feeling. And what does light feel, I ask you? Nothing. It feels nothing. It is an eldritch husk of a speed, a concept, a disgrace. Vistarchi, bewildered, shook her head.
It moves at 299,792,458 meters per second.
Exactly, I growled. Not once stopping for any pastries in the multiverse. Madeline closed her eyes, possibly to keep from stabbing anyone with a pen. Croissant-chan raised her hand.
Can light be folded?
No. What is wrong with you all?
Vistarchi asked, ready to leave.
Then it can't be laminated.
Croissant-chan said. Precisely, I nodded, now pacing back and forth atop the shattered remains of the door I had earlier obliterated with divine indignation. My steps squeaked slightly. The croissant crumbs made the wood slick. This, I gestured dramatically with one hand while the other clutched what was technically still a breakfast item, is where logic collapses. Light speed. Ha! It has no heart, no caramelization. It breaks no thresholds of intimacy. I slipped, nearly fell, and rebounded with an extra flourish. Even now, I stand upon the symbolic corpse of closed-mindedness, and laminated truth shall rise. Voidmonger was furiously sketching in his notebook, muttering,
Okay, but what if we don't bend light? We brand it. Photon path trademark, beam fluence, monetized luminosity.
He looked up, eyes gleaming with weaponized capitalism.
Do we think exclusive beam rights would play well in the hyperlux sector? Or is that too last cycle?
Vistarchi rubbed the bridge of her nose with 2 gold-tipped fingers, her patience fraying like a scroll caught in a wind tunnel.
This is why I archive things in silence.
She muttered.
So I don't have to explain to future generations why a croissant defeated physics in a committee vote.
She made a note in her archive scroll. Minutes recorded. Participants declined photonic logic, preferred emotional pastry metaphors, and localized black hole misapplication. Motion to adjourn. I think we know that I am unequivocally right, as always, I said, proudly devouring a flaky corner of destiny.
Seconded,
Said Croissant-chan.
Denied.
Madeline muttered.
We're still required to file a secondary propulsion addendum before the library's next galactic leap.
I grinned. Good. Then I hereby propose a subcommittee on pastry-based light manipulation. Working title, The Creme Brulee Prism. So in conclusion, I announced, pacing across the remains of the incinerated door, if photons had any emotional depth, they too would flake. Vistarchi closed her scroll with a sigh sharp enough to cut through metaphysics.
You're still talking during my meeting.
Madeline raised her voice at me, not looking up from her clipboard. Because truth doesn't pause for administrative fatigue, I replied, grandly.
Oh, okay, tough guy. Neither does filing a divine escalation request.
She said, standing with the energy of someone whose threshold had not only been crossed, but repaved and insulted. I froze mid-pontification, half a croissant raised like a scepter of tragic optimism. Wait, you're actually calling Yog-Sothoth?
It's the only way you'll pay attention.
she said, tapping her clipboard with ominous calm.
You've weaponized this entire meeting, derailed 3 agendas, and emotionally destabilized the pastry budget and my patience.
I can change, I blurted, standing ramrod straight with the defiance of a being who had absolutely no plan but desperately wanted credit for the gesture. I could become a being of order and restraint. I could, hypothetically, draft minutes. I might even refrain from naming propulsion systems after desserts. Croissant-chan glanced up at the ceiling, which was now quietly vibrating with bureaucratic eldritch intent.
It's okay, boss. Yogs isn't that bad. Maybe he'll come up with a solution. In time.
She winked. I groaned, loud enough to make a nearby bookshelf reclassify itself as fiction. Really? A Yog-Sothoth pun, I said, incredulous. Croissant-chan just smiled wider.
Time-sensitive humor.
Croissant-chan looked over, her butter knife still suspended above what had been an earnest attempt at note-taking.
Madeline! Are you doing the clipboard thing? The one that opens holes in reality?
Madeline didn't answer. She was already facing the ceiling, posture stiff, lips pressed in a line of sacred bureaucratic intent.
Oh, stars.
Croissant-chan whispered.
She's really doing it. She's calling Yog.
The ceiling peeled back. Not tall, not cracked, just peeled like paper surrendering to divine audit. And from the void descended Yog-Sothoth, all-seeing, all-knowing, all over it.
Yeah, request acknowledged.
Yog-Sothoth intoned, in a voice that somehow sounded like interdimensional fax paper and emotional detachment. He hovered into view with all the cosmic authority of a middle manager reviewing a spreadsheet he had no intention of fixing.
Hey there, team. Yeah. So I'm gonna need you to go ahead and explain the infraction while I pretend to take notes. Just go ahead and walk me through what flavor of nonsense we've got this cycle.
He adjusted what might have been a necktie made of collapsed timelines, and blinked exactly none of his infinite eyes.
Oh. And I'm gonna need whoever scheduled this to maybe not portal me in during my lunch continuum. That'd be great.
The temperature dropped 3 bureaucratic degrees. Yog-Sothoth hovered a little closer, the dim hum of a metaphysical copier sounding somewhere behind his many voices.
So, let's see here.
He continued, pretending to flip through a floating docket made of ineffable regret and loose paper clips.
Cthulhu the Librarian, interfering with departmental protocol, weaponizing croissants. Emotional destabilization of meeting structure. Right.
I shifted, suddenly aware of how crunchy the floor was under my feet. Yog-Sothoth looked up, or rather several eyes aligned in my direction.
Yeah, gonna go ahead and slap a disciplinary classification on this. Class Omega Bravo. Classic cosmic nonsense with pastry escalation.
He cleared what may have been a cosmic throat.
Cthulhu the Librarian, you are hereby sentenced to 100 years of community service.
I don't do community, I replied.
On Mondays only.
It clarified. I folded my tentacles in indignation. That's somehow worse.
You will operate an interdimensional advice stand.
Advice?
Correct. Guidance. Counsel. Recklessly sincere opinion giving. You will dispense truths as you see them.
Voidmonger burst out laughing.
Oh, that's going to be perfect.
Thus began my penance. The sign read, Eldritch Advice, 1 truth per customer, no refunds. The booth, an unstable wooden kiosk forged from semi-sentient desk scraps and existential debt. Croissant-chan had painted it with motivational frosting. I wore a name tag. It said, "Hi, I'm Cthulhu, unfortunately." And they came. Mortals, demigods, deities, sad poets, philosophical rodents, a jellyfish that claimed to be divorced. They sat, they asked, and I answered. "Should I marry him?" a mortal asked. "Only if he understands metaphor, and by metaphor I mean how to fold existential crises into compliments. If he can't tell the difference between a trauma response and a poem, marry a fern instead. Ferns never raise their voices, or file taxes." "What's the meaning of life?" asked a teenager with 3 faces. 42, I said. A number made famous by a book I never finished, probably because it didn't come with a croissant. "How do I find inner peace?" asked a minor wind god. "With anxiety. Hide inside an IKEA display room until you become furniture. Then sue your own worshippers for emotional negligence." An hour later, a minor god named Silidexor the Misfiled appeared. Wore a toga made of clouds. Had a nervous tick in his left eyebrow. "I'm not sure anyone believes in me anymore," he muttered. "Do you believe in yourself?" I asked. He hesitated. "Too slow," I said. "Here's what you do. Go invent a cult. Something small, niche, devoted to an abstract concept no one fully understands, like ethereal shelving or emotional punctuation. Will that bring me power?" "No," I said, "but it will confuse the right people, and sometimes confusion is influence." I leaned in, gesturing with the croissant I had not put down since breakfast. "I mean, look at me. No one believed in croissant-based propulsion either. Too flaky, they said. Not sustainable, they said. But did they ever consider emotional lamination as a warp metric? No." He tilted his head. "Well, what about capturing the speed of light?" I screamed and I lost my eldritch shit. "The speed of light is a cold, unfeeling fraud," I roared, flailing the croissant like a sacred relic, or possibly a mildly cursed wand. "You can't bake it. You can't laminate it. You can't eat it during a quarterly review." Silidexor the Misfiled made a face, half disbelief, half the expression of someone slowly realizing they've boarded the wrong philosophical bus. He didn't blink. He adjusted his stance, like he was mentally trying to step out of the conversation without actually moving his feet. "It's just basic science," he said, voice flat with the exhausted conviction of someone explaining gravity to a conspiracy theorist. Then he pivoted elegantly, apologetically, like he was leaving a dinner party before the screaming course, and walked away at a pace scientifically classified as fleeing with dignity. "The speed of light is a cold, unfeeling fraud," I bellowed, flailing the croissant like a sacred relic. "You can't bake it. You can't laminate it. You can't eat it during a quarterly review." Anyway, I stacked a few napkins with the grace of someone pretending the shift was over. I glanced at the sundial stapled to my clipboard. A full Monday. Technically served. Technically. I considered reporting it as double time, or cosmic hazard pay, or 30 hours instead of 8. Who counts when time is emotionally distorted?
Well. If I did not know any better, I could swear I was in the presence of a bodhisattva.
I turned. Buddha was there, serene, smiling, holding a steaming mug labeled "I survived enlightenment, and all I got was this cup."
You've made progress, and you haven't banished anyone to the Shadow Realm yet. Perhaps you did read the 8-fold path pamphlet I gave you.
I didn't. Also, That's because the void is full and snacking. Just give it a Kali Yuga, and it'll be vacant again, I replied, narrowing my eyes. He leaned in, locking eyes with me like a celestial therapist, who already knew I hadn't done the homework.
You could, hypothetically.
Buddha said, voice soft but packed with consequence.
Do something a big bad eldritch god would do. And you could spend some more time with me in anger management. We had so much fun last time.
I said nothing. My croissant drooped slightly in betrayal. He nodded, taking a slow sip.
I'll check back next week.
Then he walked off without another word. I sat back down. 5,199 Mondays to go, I muttered. The next customer stepped forward. They were glowing, humming, and holding what looked like a resume for existence. I attempted my best worst customer service face. Next,